Hello and welcome to Sylvia and Peter talking about mental health. You know us by now, so I don't want to spend more time talking about who we are and what we do. You can find us on LinkedIn. That's probably where you see us, watch us already. Anyway, we are talking today about fear of failure. Now, why do we dig up that old chestnut? People talk about it all the time, fear of failure. Failure happens. I know, Sylvia, before we started recording this morning, you were talking about how your Wi-Fi didn't work and how the phone didn't work and how you had blind malfunction. So if you think there's some weird and wonderful reflections in Sylvia's glasses, it is because of a blind malfunction. You know, it happens. But should we be afraid of things happening? Should we be afraid of doing something in case it doesn't work? Those of you who have followed us will know that the conversation Sylvia and I have recorded about loneliness has had 3 or 4 attempts before we got something in the bag because of technical malfunction. If we had been afraid of trying a new system, of trying a new app, that would never have happened. But certainly from my perspective, I wouldn't have learned anything either about what that app potentially can do for me. So have I fear of failure? Sometimes, yes. I think it's normal. I don't think we should be afraid of it. But we shouldn't make it a way of life.
Where do we start on failure? I'm probably quite an expert on failure because it was probably the root cause of my poor mental health all those years ago that I thought and believed wholeheartedly that I was a failure at what we would call at an identity level. I was a failure. There were certain things that happened in my life and that was the belief that I held about myself, that I was a failure. And that then led to all sorts of different things. Now that's different for me from the fear of failure in terms of, am I going to do something because I might not be good at it? But I might be good at it. Am I not going to do something because someone might laugh at me? Many, many years ago, no, I wouldn't, because I would not have wanted people to laugh at me, take the mickey out of me. I wouldn't want to feel embarrassed or humiliated or small or whatever phraseologies that go through when we believe we are a failure. But these days, my view is, to your point about if something goes wrong, we won't learn. There's that phrase I often have quoted to people: a comfort zone is a great place to be, but nothing grows there. My view is, so what if it doesn't go right? I'll learn from it. So what if people laugh at me? It's not going to kill me. What if I feel humiliated? Well, that's down to me, allowing other people to affect me. There's a very, very different way, but it's as such a powerful emotion if we feel we are a failure. But also doing things or not doing things can also mean that we don't do the things that we love. We don't experience things and be able to say, yeah, I tried that, it didn't work, I'd try something else. Is it not better to try something and it not work out and then do something differently? Very, very simple thing. You know, someone fails a driving test. Oh, I'm a failure. No, you failed the test. It doesn't mean you are a failure. And there were, you know, we spoke about this before, Peter, haven't we? One of the NLP presuppositions. There is no failure, only feedback. In that driving test situation, the feedback is, you better practice in reversing around a corner better. You better look in your mirrors a bit more. That's the feedback. It doesn't mean you are a failure because you didn't pass that test.
I think you just described how I felt back in the day when my perfectionism was at its highest. You know, perfectionism is a different word for constant fear of failure, because I wanted everything to be perfect. And that's why I hated myself more and more, because I realized I wasn't perfect. But I was so not liking people laughing at me. I didn't want to be the laughing stock. I didn't want to be ridiculed. And I thought I was if somebody mentioned that I hadn't done something completely correctly. So that was a very difficult thing to live with. And these days, I try to teach my clients what I taught myself, that perfection doesn't exist, but excellence does. So go for excellence. Don't worry about perfection. It's pointless, waste of time. And that has helped a lot of people. It helped me, and I still go for excellence. Why not? Why not have a high level of performance? But I fail. It isn't everything I do that works. It isn't everything that I try to learn that I get first time. I've learned to accept that. It's normal. So we shouldn't be afraid of things not working out. What I do have a problem with is people saying we only learn from our mistakes. No, we don't. If we only focus on our mistakes, it'll be a very miserable life that we end up living. So we learn from our mistakes for sure. We can do things differently, but we should always remember our successes, what does go well, because that is what we need to draw on to learn other things. So we have to look at both the failures and the successes and put the two together and figure out where do we go from here. I spoke to a client last week who had done a skills health check. It's an online test you can do, and she was very high in certain aspects and not as high in others. And she thought she was rubbish at those others. But actually, she was always above middle or above average, even for the lowest of her stuff. And she thought she couldn't get a job because she had those low points. Well, we just figured out what she wants to do is really playing to all her strengths. The rest of it is just supporting acts. She doesn't need to be brilliant at maths because that's not where she's going anyway. So we have to be careful when we think, am I a failure? Have I failed if it's something that's totally outside of what we are naturally good at or interested in?
As you're talking there, what's going through my mind is, what does it matter if we fail anyway? Where does this fear of failure come from? As I said earlier, if someone laughs at me, that's not going to kill me. If I get humiliated or embarrassed, that's not going to kill me. What might kill me is my view of myself, as I was many, many years ago. It then can tap into, it can erode away at our way of being, our self-esteem, our self-value and our self-worth. Of course it can. I'm not undermining or making light of that. My point is, if we are more secure, more okay, comfortable within our own skin, as I am now, does it matter if someone laughs at me? No, it doesn't. But someone that doesn't have that way of being, it can be hugely detrimental. So but it's also a curiosity. Why are we so fearful of failure? Does it matter that I can't water ski? I'd love to water ski, but it doesn't work. Hey ho, there we are. Does it matter that I can't do that? Or I would be able to if I tried hard enough, but do I actually want to try hard enough? No, I don't. My point is, does it matter that I failed at water skiing, for example?
I think it has a lot to do with how we want to be perceived and how we perceive other people's perception of us. There's a lot of perceiving and perception here, I know that. But I think it's about our image. We are afraid of looking stupid. We're afraid of appearing stupid or less than, because we think other people are more than us. So it comes from personal insecurities, I believe, that we want to be the very best we can be because we think other people are, and we want to be right up there with them. And if you haven't got the self-confidence, if you have a slightly distorted view of yourself, then you will see something that doesn't work first time or at all as being part of your identity, which it so is not, but it feels like it. So I think I don't know, fear of failure has always been around, hasn't it? It's not a new phenomenon, but I think it has become more pronounced with the way social media have grown, and we now have that. We didn't have that in our childhood. The mobile phone wasn't invented, all sorts of things, and there was no internet. People were still afraid of failing, but we weren't exposed to this wall of success or what looks like success all the time that can make us ourselves feel that we are not as good as the glorified videos we see. And we still don't know what happens behind the scenes. So that could be a very insecure person just trying to look very successful.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah. And that's the thing, is to your point, is I might not be able to do that, but I can do this really, really well. And that other person might not be able to do what I can do really well. We've spoken before, haven't we, about this comparison trap, and let's just focus on what we can do rather than things that we can't do. And then perhaps we can not exactly avoid, but we don't then fall into that, go into that territory of, oh, I am a failure, or I have failed at that. And perhaps use, I'm not so great at that, but I'm really good at this. And perhaps using that terminology as a trigger to go back to what we're successful at, rather than focus on the things we can't do, we focus on the things we can do. But I do wish that people would split out the skills and capabilities, for example, from the identity. So rather than I am a failure, I failed at that test, but doesn't mean I'm a failure. And I think that's a very, very key thing for me, because if we talk about it at an identity level, then it can start to erode, our perception of ourselves, perception of others of ourselves, our self-esteem and worth. Whereas we put it at a skills and behavior level, it makes a hell of a difference.
It absolutely does. And I have a lot of clients who are quite successful business people. And some of them have some spectacular failures, business failures behind them. They bounced back. They started a new business, having gone bankrupt with one, they started another one, and they are now very successful. Things happen behind the glamorous and the successful facade. There's a story behind every face, as we keep saying. And it doesn't mean that everyone who's successful has a string of failures. It just means that this overnight success is probably 10 years in the making. So we have to allow ourselves to stumble across the way to where we want to be. It's normal. We shouldn't be afraid of it.
It's an interesting point there. It's like you just said there, the splitting out of the business was a failure, but either person wasn't the failure.
Exactly.
Yeah, and there's a very, very big difference, because it'd be very easy to say the business failed, ergo I did too, but that's not the case.
Certainly not the case. Let us know what you think. Have you had failures that made you feel like a failure, or are you immune to this mental twist that we think we are the identity of something that didn't work? Let us know what you think. Thank you for watching, and take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye.